guys are ready, I believe we are.
All right. Disclaimer, my voice is still messed up, so if I cough in the middle, I'm very sorry.
3 men, 2 women, 1 dead man, 1 crazy wife, and 1 strangled bird.
Suspects? Was it Mr. Wright with his bare hands in the kitchen? Or was it Miss Wright in the attic with the rope?
With all this trifling evidence, we must decide who the real murderer is.
Our opening scene begins at the scene of the crime. 3 men, the sheriff, the county attorney, are interviewing Mr. Hale to figure out exactly who killed Miss Wright's husband. Once they leave, the 2 women, Miss Peters and Miss Hale, begin to talk amongst themselves while taking their own turn at the evidence. Well, Mr. Hale, tell just what happened here yesterday morning.
Harry and I started into town with a load of potatoes, and we came along the road from my place, and I got here and I said, I'm going to see if John will go in with me on a party line, our party telephone. I spoke to Wright about it once before, and he put me off saying folks talk too much anyway. And all he asked was for some peace and quiet. I guess you know about how much he liked to talk himself anyway. But I thought maybe if I went to his house and talked about it before his wife, though I said to Harry, I don't know that what his wife wanted really made much of difference anyhow.
Let's talk about that later, Mr. Hale. I do want to talk about that, but let's just talk about what happened here yesterday.
I didn't hear or see anything. I knocked at the door, and then it was all still and quiet, but I knew they must be up. It was after 8 o'clock. So I knocked again, and I thought I heard somebody say, come in. I wasn't sure, and I'm not sure yet, but I opened the door, this door, and there, in that rocker, was Miss Wright.
And what was she doing?
She was rocking back and forth, and she had her apron in her hand, and she was kind of pleating it.
And how did she look?
Well, she looked queer.
How do you mean queer?
Well, as if she didn't know what she was going to do next, and she was kind of done up.
And how did she seem to feel about your coming?
Why, I don't think she minded one way or another. She didn't pay much of attention. I said, how do, Miss Wright? It's cold, ain't it? And she said, is it? And went and kind of just pleating at her apron. Well, I was surprised. She didn't ask me to come up to the stove or sit down, but she just sat there, not even looking at me. And so I said, I want to see John. And then she laughed, and I guess you would call it a laugh. I thought of Harry and the team outside, so I said a little sharp, can't I see John? No, she said kind of dull-like. Ain't he home? Says I. Yes, she says, he's home. Then why can't I see him? I asked her, only out of patience. 'Cause he's dead, she said. Dead, says I. She's nodded her head and not a bit excited at all, but just rocking back and forth. Why, where is he? Says I, not knowing really what to say. She just pointed upstairs like that. And I got up with the idea of going up there, and I walked from there to here, and then I says, well, what did he die of? He died of a rope around his neck, she said. And then she just went on pleating at her apron. Well, I went out and I called Harry. I thought I might need help, and we went upstairs, and he was just lying.
I guess we'll go upstairs first then, and out to the barn around there. You're convinced that there was nothing important here, nothing to point to any motive?
Nothing but kitchen things.
Well, here's a nice mess. Oh, her fruit, it did freeze. She was worried about that. That it would turn so cold that her jars would break.
Well, you can't beat the woman held for murder and worrying about her preserves.
I guess before we're through, we're going to have to figure out something serious than preserves to worry about.
Well, women are worse than worrying over trifles. And at this point, the county attorney and the sheriff and Mr. Hale all head upstairs to check out the evidence of the body.
Miss Peters,
Yes, Miss Hale?
do you think she did it?
I don't know.
Well, I don't think she did. Asking for her apron and her little shawl, worrying about all her fruit.
Mr. Peters says it looks bad for her. Mr. Henderson is awful sarcastic in speech, and he'll make fun of her for saying that she didn't wake up.
Well, I guess John Wright didn't wake up when they tied that rope on his neck.
No, it's strange. It must have been done awfully crafty and still. They say it was such a funny way to kill a man, rigging up his neck like that.
That's what Mr. Hale said. There was a gun in the house, he says. That's just what he doesn't understand.
Mr. Henderson coming out of that was needed for a case with a motive, something to show a sudden anger, a sudden feeling. She was piecing a quilt.
It's log cabin pattern. Pretty, isn't it? I wonder if she was going to quilt it or not. I don't know if there's anything so strange. Our taking our time up with the little things while they're upstairs looking at the evidence. I don't see it as anything to laugh about.
Oh, of course, they have some awfully important things on their minds.
Miss Peters, look at this one. Here this is, the one she was working on, and look at the sewing. It was all neat and even. And look at this, it's all over the place. Why, looks as she doesn't know what she was about.
Miss Hale, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm just pulling out a stitch or two that's messed up. Bad sewing makes me fidgety.
I don't think we ought to touch things.
I'll just finish up this end. Miss Peters,
Yes, Miss Hale?
what do you suppose she was so nervous about?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know why she was so nervous. I sometimes so awful queer when I'm just tired. Well, we must get these things wrapped up. They might be through sooner than we think. I wonder where I can find a piece of string and some paper.
In that cupboard, maybe.
Why, there's a bird cage. Did Miss Wright have a bird?
Well, I don't know whether she did or not. I haven't been here in so long. There was a man selling canaries cheap, but I don't know if she got one. She might have. She used to sing real pretty herself.
Seems to be funny that a bird was here, but she must have had one. Why would she have a cage? I wonder what happened to it.
Suppose maybe the cat got it.
No, she didn't have a cat. She got that feeling that some people get around cats, being afraid of them. My cat got into her room and she was real upset and made me take it out.
My sister Bessie get like that. Queer, ain't it?
Look at the hinge on the door. It's tearing apart.
Looks as if someone must have been rough with it.
Why, yes.
I wish if they're going to find any evidence, they'd do it soon. I don't like this place.
But I'm awful glad you came with me, Miss Hale. It would be lonesome sitting here alone.
It would, wouldn't it? But I tell you, what do I do wish, Miss Peters? I wish I came here over when she was here. I wish I did.
But of course you were awful busy, Miss Hale. Your husband and your children.
I could have come. I stayed away because they weren't cheerful. And that's why I ought to have come. I never liked this place. Maybe because it's down in the hollow and you don't see the road. I don't know what it is. But it's a lonesome place. It always was. I wish I'd come over to see Minnie Foster sometimes. I can see now.
Well, you mustn't reproach yourself, Miss Hale. Somehow you just don't see what things are going on until something comes up.
Not having children makes less work, but it makes a quiet house. And Wright out to work all day, and when he wasn't, no company. Did you know John Wright, Miss Peters?
No, I didn't know him. I saw him in town, though. People said he was a good man.
Yes, good. He didn't drink. Kept his word well as most, I guess. Paid his debts. He was a hard man, Miss Peters. Just to pass the time of day with him, like a raw wind that gets to the bone. I should think she would have wanted a bird. But what do you suppose went with it?
Maybe it got sick and died.
You weren't raised around here, were you? You didn't know her.
Not till yesterday.
She, come to think of it, she was like a bird herself. Real sweet and pretty, but kind of timid and fluttery. How did she change? Tell you what, Miss Peters, why don't you take this quilt with you? It'd take up her mind on things.
Well, I think that's a real nice idea, Miss Hale. There couldn't possibly be any objection to it, could there? Now, just what should I take? I wonder what patches are in here and her things.
Here's some red. I expect this has got sewing things in it. What a pretty box. I wonder if someone gave it to her. Maybe her scissors are in here. There's something wrapped up in this piece of silk.
Is it her scissors?
Oh, Miss Peters, it's
the bird.
But Miss Peters, look at its neck. It's all twisted.
Somebody wrung its neck.
She liked the bird. She was going to bury it in that pretty box.
When I was a girl and my kitten, there was a boy who took a hatchet, and before I could get there, if it hadn't held me back, then I might have hurt him.
I wonder how it would have seemed never to have any children. No, Wright wouldn't like the bird, a thing that sang. She used to sing. He killed that too.
We don't know what happened.
I knew John Wright.
It was an awful thing that was done here in this house, is not Miss Hale. Killing a man as he slept, slipping a rope around his neck, and choked the life out of him.
His neck choked the life out of him.
We don't know who killed him. We don't know.
If there had been years and years of nothing but then a bird to sing to you, it would be awful still. Then after the bird, still.
I know what stillness is. When we were homesteaded in Dakota, and my first baby died after he was 2 years old, and me with no other than...
How soon do you suppose they'll be through, looking through the evidence?
I know what stillness is. The law has got to punish the crime, Miss Hale.
I wish you'd seen Minnie Foster all dressed up in a white dress with blue ribbons, and stood up there in the choir and sang, "Oh, I wish I'd come over here once in a while." That's a crime. That's a crime. Who's going to punish that?
We mustn't take on.
I might have known she needed help. I know how things can be for women. I tell you, it's queer, Miss Peters. We live close together and we live far apart. We all go through the same things. Different kinds of things, but the same. If I was you, I wouldn't tell her fruit was gone. Tell her it ain't. Tell her it's all right. Take this into proof to her. She may never know whether it was broke or not.
My, it's a good thing that the men couldn't hear us. Wouldn't they laugh, getting all stirred up over a little thing like a dead canary? And as if that would have anything to do with wouldn't they laugh?
Maybe they would. Maybe they wouldn't.
No, Peters, it's perfectly clear except for a reason for doing it. But you know the juries when it comes to women. If there's a definite thing, something to show, something to make a story, a thing that would connect it with this strange way of doing it.
Well, I've got the team around. Pretty cold out here.
I'm going to stay here myself. You can send Frank out, can't you? I want to go over everything. I'm not satisfied that we can't do better.
Do you want to see what Miss Peters is going to take in?
Oh, I guess that there's not very dangerous things the ladies have picked out. No, Miss Peters doesn't need supervising. For that matter, a sheriff's wife is married to the law. Ever think of it that way, Miss Peters? No, not that way.
Married to the law. I just want you to come in here a minute, George. We ought to take a look at these windows.
Oh, the windows. Well, Henry, at least we found out she was not going to quilt it. She was going to, what do you ladies call it?
We call it not it.